Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Macrodose here on Friends with Benefits. My name is Kyle Thiermann. These are deep dive, long form interviews right alongside Sara Russell's microdosed short form interviews. So if you're looking for something with a bit longer of a time range, these episodes are usually between an hour, hour and a half, where Sarah's are closer to 10 to 15 minutes. And this one is with none other than the founder of MUD WTR, Shane Heath. We're bringing Shane on the show periodically to talk about various snapshots in this company's evolution before it all gets lost to the broad strokes that memory has a tendency to do. And we recorded this episode about a year ago when he's talking about year 2 of MUD WTR. I believe it was right after their first fundraise or going into it. And just giving you the details of what it was like to launch this rocket ship. So for any business owners out there, for anyone who's interested in starting a business, I think that Shane has a very lucid view into what it's like to make that happen. And that's the intention behind a lot of these episodes, bringing Shane on here. So also, we would love to start getting voice memos from you listeners. And if you're already a mud drinker, bust out your phone and let me know how you take your mud water in the morning. People like their mud water differently. There's all different kinds of recipes for it, and we want to feature you on the show. So just bust out your phone, record like a minute of audio, and then email that voice memo to podcast@mudwtr.com. That's podcast@mudwtr.com. And if we feature you on the show, we'll send you a free mud mug. Just put in your shipping address, and we would love to hook you up with a new vessel for your mud. Also, if you're new to MUD WTR, you can start a subscription. Give it a test run for 20% off by typing in the code TWB20 at checkout. That's TWB20 at checkout. And that's a special code for all Trends with Benefits listeners. All right, that's it for now. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Sit back and enjoy this podcast, which is the second installment of our founders interview with Shane Heath. Where do you want to start?
Like what? Because like we're already into like starting MUD, but I want to kind of maybe backtrack, which could help as like a prelude to this episode, into like what allowed me to have maybe like the courage and like the tools to start MUD, I guess.
What allowed you to do that?
Because like, what's up?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, starting a company, I mean, at the time when I did it, it didn't feel that scary to me. And I think that for most people, they are somewhat surprised by that, because people are like, how did you get the courage to, take the leap of faith and put yourself on the line? Because you're kind of putting your personal brand on the line and saying like, I believe in this, like this is going to work out. And if it doesn't, it's like, you kind of feel like you're falling on your face a little bit, right? But at the time for me, it wasn't too big of a leap, and I think that was due to a few tools, like practices that I was partaking in, a few key experiences, and a few individuals as well. And so I think, obviously the whole story of like my life all contributed, but specifically after that art residency in Goa, India, I spent a month on this island chain off the coast of India, off the east coast, to surf. India isn't really known for surfing, and like I was saying before, even if there was waves, it wouldn't be like widely known, just because water sports haven't like taken hold of culture. But I knew a couple people who surfed there, like living there for 6 months, and they told me where to go. And I'm not going to tell you where to go, but you should go there and find it. But off the coast of India, there's an island chain that's owned by India. It's actually closer to Thailand, and so it's pretty remote and really popular. Where you fly in is a very popular scuba diving spot. But if you can jump on a ferry and you go like 11 hours on this like very rugged ferry down to the southernmost island in this chain. and it's a very remote island. There's no cell service there. There's no internet there. There's like really no connection to the outside world, besides at this one elementary school that I found, where I would go in and like sneak onto their computers, but it was like full dial-up style. Like, yeah, it took me like, I just needed to send an email to my mom, and it took me like an hour.
How many months into your trip in India were you at this point?
So this is like 5.5 months in.
It's a good long trip.
Yeah. So I was in Goa for 5.5 months, and then I flew out to this island and was planning to stay there for a month. And so I arrived there, I went there with a friend, and he was going to stay for just 2 weeks, but really good surfer. So he was super excited to go out there. And we get there, and the island is just like what's beautiful about India is like it's an amazing place to go. Like I would highly suggest everyone go, but like it doesn't feel like they care whether you're there or not. You know, like a lot of tourist destinations, it feels like the whole culture and country like shifted to accommodate these like transients coming in to party. In India, it's kind of like, come if you want, like leave when you want.
So
like
good,
it's not formed to like meet your needs, and so it feels very raw and organic. And for me, that was I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it changes the whole experience when the culture is catering to tourism. Mm-hmm. But India doesn't really do that.
Yeah, you're kind of forced just to jump in the stream with everyone else, and that's sort of the experience I wanted. And this island specifically was like more extreme than like a Goa type experience.
Did you bring a surfboard with you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we both brought surfboards. Even in Goa, I surfed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't
at the art residency.
At the art residency,
Sick.
yeah. It was like every day was like the best days was like the worst days ever at Manresa.
Sure. So, did you grow up surfing in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, I grew up surfing, but I never like went all in. You know, like a lot of our friends were like pros, and I was like, I'm probably not going to be, this isn't going to be like my thing.
Right.
So like I did like it a lot, but I definitely saw other avenues that were going to be my thing.
Yeah. For people who don't know, surfing in Santa Cruz is a religion.
Yeah. It's very competitive.
It's like football in Texas or hunting in Montana. Everybody
Totally.
surfs. And the king of the football team is the best surfer in school. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take much and we have great waves here, so it doesn't take much to get into it.
Yeah, and it's not like shaka, super like chill mentality. It's like a competitive sport from very early on. Yeah. Even if you're not competing, you're competing with everyone else in the water. It's sport built on scarcity, really. But yeah, so in India it was fun. There's like no one surfing. I would surf a lot. I did a lot of stand-up paddleboarding and whatnot, but really not good waves in Goa. But supposedly where I was going had amazing waves. So went out there, I was with Deva.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we both know Deva, and we check into our quote unquote hotel, which is, it was called like the Rainbow Lodge or something. And these are like literal like wood shacks, and they're $1 a night. And and they're like, I met friends who like had like went into their bed and like pulled the sheets off, and like a full size snake is in their bed. Like this place is like, they're like, when tourists come, we'll put them up here, but like nobody's coming.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's coming out here.
Authentic experience.
Yeah. But you know, like anything, like you get used to that, and getting to the wave was even an experience. So we both had scooters, and like nobody surfs. There's no locals who surf, which is very unique as well. Not a single person. Like we were riding around town trying to find where the wave was, or where the entry point to find the wave is, and people didn't even know like what we were talking about. Like they were just like pointing us to the beach, and there's like the wrong spot, really.
Wow. It's such a weird one when you go to a place with waves and there's no surf culture.
No surf culture at all.
It's totally, there's bizarre. No like stickers everywhere. Nothing. If you go to Bali, the
there's
whole
no surf
thing
shops,
is catered to it. Right.
Nothing.
It's really cool.
Really cool. And we were just riding around, couldn't get any directions where to go. And finally, like I see this cutoff that looks like a single track bike trail that you would see up in like Nicene Marks or something like that. And I'm like,
Nicene Marks is like a bike trail that we have around Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I was like, let's try this. It like looked like it was heading in the general direction of the sea. And we're on scooters, and this is like a mountain bike trail. Like there's like, it's not like well groomed or anything. It's like rocks everywhere and like downhill and uphill climbs, and we're just like going, no joke, for 15 minutes on this trail. Like, it's long, and we're on scooters. And Dave was like, we should turn back. I'm like, no. And we go like a little bit further, and we get to this spot, and we like turn off our scooters, and you could just hear the ocean. And we look to our right, and you could kind of see the beach. And so we jump off our scooters and walk out. And we're kind of like walking through, and there's like a swamp over here. And we heard like this place is notorious for saltwater crocs, and we're kind of like, oh shit, let's keep going. And we get out to the beach, and we're on the track, right? And then we see the beach, and it opens up, and it's just this huge empty bay. And to our left, we look out, and it's this point, and there's this perfect left hand like overhead waves coming in on this point, and we just like hugged each other. We're like, yeah, like it was crazy. Like there's no one there, and we felt like we just earned something. And yeah, we go out, and that was where we'd go every day, surf there every day. There's maybe like 5 other tourists, that would come and go throughout the month that I was there, but like there was never really a lineup. I had multiple days where I was surfing by myself.
Wow, what a fun trip.
It was nuts. And one little small Snapple fact about this place is they have Komodo dragons, but they're called monitor lizards. So they're a little smaller, but they're like 4 feet. And monitor lizards, when they don't they'll bite you, but they don't like bite to kill you. They bite you, and their mouths have so much bacteria that they slowly kill you, and they just wait for you to die, and then they get you.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How long does it take for one of these things to kill you?
Like hours. Like hours. Not that long. And so
and it can kill a human?
Yeah, full on. Yeah, and so they don't typically like hunt during the day. And what people used to do is, because that trail kind of takes a long time, people would just like camp out on the beach, and the beach is really just like the jungle. The jungle goes right up to the reef, and people would get bit by these things in the middle of the night, and like a couple people died, and so I was aware of that. And one time I was riding my scooter back, and by the time I was like 2 weeks in, like I was like racing this course, like it was like a course. Like I was just like, I knew every turn.
You're a local of the wave.
I was.
Now.
Yeah, I was doing like time trials and stuff on a scooter. Like I was way too comfortable on a scooter. But I round this corner, and the entire trail is taken up by a monitor lizard, and I was like, whoa! And I had to stop, and I was like 5 feet from it, and it just like looked at me, and I looked at it, and then it just ran off. But
you're like, this is my wave,
this
bro.
Is my zone. But anyways, what I wanted to get to was, because it was so remote, and there was nothing to do at night or anything. Like I was going to bed at 8 and waking up at 5 and surfing, like that kind of schedule. And I brought this book with me called "You Are the Placebo" by Joe Dispenza. And now I've come to realize that, I mean, Joe Dispenza is amazing, but I really view it as kind of like a really good gateway into gaining control of your own healing, and building a relationship with your mind. So some of his meditations and his teachings are really good for that. And I think that like it's led me down deeper paths. But at the time it was just like perfect for where I was at.
Yeah. Joe Dispenza had a really bad spine injury.
I believe, so that's how the book starts, is he had this car crash, and basically like he was, offered the opportunity to like fuse his spine, which means that he would basically be like very inhibited in movement. And so he was a neuroscientist, so he understood the inner workings of the mind, and began meditating. Like I'm pretty sure he lied down face down on a massage table for like a couple hours every day, and he would put himself into what's called like a belief state, like where his mind was very malleable. And it's called "You Are the Placebo" because he's essentially like harnessing the power of his own belief, which placebo is essentially that, like, because you believed the doctor gave you the pill that was blue, it was a sugar pill, but you believed that it was something and it worked. So what if you could essentially be your own doctor and tell yourself things that you believed? And so he'd get himself in these states and guide himself through these meditations and visualize the fusing of his spine. And within a couple of weeks, he was walking, and he's great. He's fine. So
did you start doing this while you were on the trip?
Yeah. So I had this book, and I was in this location with literally nothing to do besides surf and eat and sleep.
And avoid dragons.
And I started doing his, they're like 1.5 hour long meditations every day. And they're like, it was work. Like, it's not something, it's not like a calm, like relaxing meditation. Like you're doing work, like he's pulling you into these, like the first like 30, 40 minutes is a meditation and kind of getting you into that malleable state. So that part's relaxing, but then the work begins and he kind of like pulls you into like previous life experiences and belief states about yourself that you no longer want to feel, and making like having you feel that in the expansiveness of your body at that time, and it kind of sucks and it's hard work, and then he pulls you out of that and into like how you really want to feel, and back and forth over the course of an hour and a half. And
where would you do these meditations?
Just in my hut, in my $1 a night hut,
in the sketchy little snake hut.
Yeah. One time like a rat just like crawled up the wall into the roof. It was like a thatched hut. I was like, "Hey, little buddy."
I didn't call you in my vision.
Yeah, it was.
So what did you deal with?
Rugged.
Tell me about all your insecurities.
I don't want to go too deep into that, but I mean, there's some insecurities around previous relationships that were brought up, things I wanted to deal with there. Insecurities around like my voice. Like I think on the previous episode we talked about that time with like doing jiu-jitsu with my sister and feeling my voice just like cut, and because of that, like it grew into like a skill set of like I was a good writer growing up, and I really enjoy writing. Have some typos still, but I'm working on it. But like I love the art of copywriting. I love the art of painting. I love the art of design. And a lot of the reason there is because I can kind of go off into my room and I can't get my voice shut off, and I can present it in full-fledged perfection of what I wanted to express, and I love that. But I knew I wanted to develop my voice. I wanted to, quote unquote, free my voice again, find my voice. So that was another thing. And then just overall understanding what my purpose is in life. So I would equate them to those three things. So like relationships, expression, and purpose. So
once you would get into these meditations, for example, if you're tackling insecurity around your voice, wanting to have a stronger voice, how would you attack that or approach it or work through it in these meditations? Yeah. So it would start with feeling the feeling that you don't want to feel anymore, right? Like building a relationship with the thing that you're dealing with. Like, I think sometimes we ignore it and push it away, and it maybe manifests in strange ways, but really like facing that, like when I felt nervous in front of the class that one time, like really like sit there and feel that in my body, remember it, identify it, almost like personify it. Like I remember that person now, like that entity. So that's like one aspect. And then the hard part is trying to envision the exact same experience or a similar experience, but feeling completely different. Which is tough because you have years of life experience and patterning to the contrary. But it's very doable, and it's really empowering because once you get over the like, all right, even though this is hard, like I can imagine it. Like it feels uncomfortable because part of me, there's like a voice that's like, you can't do that. Like, that's not you. You remember what happened, like that kind of thing. Your little Schmeagol voice. But that's the purpose. That's why you do it over and over, is because over time, that becomes you, and the other you becomes the past, and this thing that you can kind of point at and be like, I remember that. So that really is like the nature of his work, and why that book was like, that's a book that I recommend to so many people, especially people who are dealing with like a transition in their life or like a tough time. It's been very transformative for me. Would you do the first meditation, think of yourself in the past in the way that you didn't want to react, and then go through that same situation again in a way that you would? And was that the whole meditation? Kind of. Well, the first part is a meditation, putting yourself in the malleable belief state. And then from there, then it's the sequence of going back and forth between the two, like maybe 3 times or so. But when you're doing it, it's not just like imagining it in your mind. It's really trying to like embody the feeling like deeply, on both sides. And especially on what you're trying to bring about, which is something that I now do daily pretty much, where like when I'm thinking about something that I want to bring into the world, like I'm not cognitively thinking about it. I'm emotionally thinking about it. Like, what is the feeling come up? And those, like, you can't really put words on that, but like there's
I've built, like, I think we all can build this like muscle in us that it's hard to explain, but it's like an emotional muscle. And that's really where the magic happens in that particular meditation sequence that he's teaching.
That's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
So did you stick with that as you came back, started MUD? I mean, we left off last time as you had just launched MUD. You were getting a few subscribers. There was mud on your ceiling. You were fulfilling all the orders by yourself.
Yeah.
You were running out of cash as you were trying to get more product in. And it seemed like you were kind of coming apart at the seams in a lot of ways.
A little bit, yeah. So some of the things that kept those seams from coming apart was this. It wasn't that I necessarily continued doing these hour-long meditations every day. I think it is important to do the work and then kind of like let the work like happen in your life. I've heard a lot of coaches in regards to like manifesting change, like talk about if you like sit in that space for forever, like you're constantly recalling the space of lack, or like acknowledging that you don't have that yet or something, like just start living it out. And what's interesting that I've seen is I went connecting the dots backwards. I almost like forgot what I was thinking about over there on these islands, and then I remember, and I'm like, whoa, like just seeing how it really did like create this wave in my life.
Well, you got to show up in the arena sooner or later.
Right.
You can't just be the guy practicing forever.
That's exactly
like that's the way that I feel about people who are, they want to be actors and all they do is take acting lessons. Right? It's like sooner or later you just got to show up for the fucking audition. Yeah,
that's spot on. So after this trip, I came back home to Santa Cruz for a brief amount of time. Like I said, part of the things that I was trying to deal with was like, what is my purpose? Like, what do I want my days to look like in regards to like pursuing my passions in life? And at that time, it was like around starting. Like, I wanted to start a company of my own. I wanted to, or if not that, I wanted to work for a company that I was like on the ground level at. And
why?
I wanted to have freedom. So part of it is I felt like that was the best way to leverage what I was good at. Like I look back now and I see like influence from my dad, who, like I said, built the houses that I grew up in, but he's primarily a contractor. He's a builder, but he learned enough about enough things that he could participate intellectually across the full spectrum of the process, from the plans, the blueprints, through to the finishing touches on a home. And I viewed myself, I subconsciously kind of built a similar skill set in regards to building companies and businesses. And like I learned design, but I also learned the business side, I learned the marketing side, and I even learned how to do like front end coding, and hopefully have built more like interpersonal relationship skills and people management skills too along the way. But I think that really drew me to startups, because you get to participate in a lot. And I love the ideation phases of companies. And I feel I had worked at larger companies where I was focused on like one aspect of this certain app. And that's not, I don't like chiseling away at something that's pretty good already.
So in those first few months, what was the feeling that you were getting in your body?
Like upon arriving home?
Upon arriving home, like after, let's take like starting the day. Mm-hmm. What was that feeling just as you were starting this company in your body?
Starting MUD WTR.
Starting MUD WTR, yeah. Because you mentioned Joe Dispenza, you mentioned like what it feels like in the body.
I think I do want to add that, like, so when I came home, I moved to LA shortly after and I'd never lived in LA, but I knew that was my next spot. And I joined a tech company that was very similar to what I would want to join when I was like thinking about it in those meditations. I joined as a co-founder. I joined a company that was started by Paul DeJoe, and it was a remote company. We got to travel. We went to numerous countries, and we were building something that had the potential to be really big. And shortly after moving to LA, I got the calling to do an ayahuasca ceremony. And previous, I brought that podcast episode and was like really excited about it, but I also had a ton of trepidation for it. Like
the Joe
a lot
Rogan,
of respect.
the
Yeah.
Joe
I was
Rogan
like, I don't know if
podcast,
I love that there's people out here, and like, I'm really excited that to participate at some point, but I didn't feel ready. And now I felt ready after traveling for some time. And I hit up Gary, who was the one who was like first to go out in the jungle after listening to that podcast. And like I said, he was down there like 3 months later.
Sure. So there's one of our childhood friends who was, if you listen to the first episode, like part of this first crew of us all listening to this podcast
ayahuasca for the first time,
with
and he was
Aubrey
like,
Marcus and Joe Rogan. We're like, whoa, this is some crazy shit. And it all kind of
that was the
off
calling
from
for
there.
him. And so I knew that he had been down there multiple times. So I just texted him like, yo, I'm feeling ready, and I'm feeling like I want to participate in this experience. And he texted me back. He's like, do you remember Kristen Appenrod? And this was a girl who I grew up with, like high school friends. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so she is partners with a shaman now, and they're leading an ayahuasca ceremony in Santa Cruz. And I was like, childhood friend leading an ayahuasca ceremony in my hometown right after I finally got the calling. It's their first time doing it up there. And I was just like, that's like, I'm doing it. And so I ended up doing my first ayahuasca ceremony the New Year's after I got back from India in 2014 or 15, and up in Santa Cruz. And it was like the most transformational weekend of my life, probably. Definitely the most transformational like experience, like just shifted me out of who I was, and really answered a lot for me.
How so?
So it was a 3-day weekend where you're drinking 3 days in a row. The first night is sort of a exploratory, more so, unofficially, like they didn't say that, but lower dose. And for me, it felt like loosening up the soil a little bit. Like I had, for me, I was like, had a lot of fear going into that. Like, I don't know where I'm going. Like, this is going to be crazy. Like, what if I lose my mind? What if I'm never the same? Like, these types of questions that you don't want to have.
Will this be permanent?
Yeah. Those are the questions you don't want to have. But through that first experience, I was able to gain a lot of trust in just like the integrity of the space they were creating there. And in the second night, which really allowed me to like let go more. Like it redefined what that actually meant for me, the phrase letting go. Like it was so intense, so deep. The experience, like there's music and the music sort of takes you in, kind of the back door in a sense. Like you drink the medicine, you're like sitting there. You don't want to be, wait, when's it gonna hit? Wait, was that it? Like, no, you want to just be relaxed, and all of a sudden it just kind of takes you like a little river. And then maybe you have a moment of like, oh, like I'm completely gone in this, which I had, but I was so trusting the experience that I just kept going, and soon found myself in what felt like a different kind of, I was in the same room. I could open my eyes and sort of see the people in the space, but was a completely different realm of reality. Felt very jungle-like, and like I would describe as like very dense. Like it felt like the air had density to it that I could experience and see and feel. And like looking at my hands, it was like kind of vine-like or like snake-like illusions, kind of like weaving up my arms and different like colors and everything. So I was seeing like the psychedelic experience and noticing that like in a typical setting that I would have been like, oh shit, this is gnarly. But I was so trusting that I literally got this message that was just like, you don't need to do anything right now. Like you don't need to like think about what you should experience, which is something that I noticed then that I did a lot. Like even in a meditation practice, it was like, am I doing this right? If I started to feel really clear-headed, it was like, all right, what should I do here? Like, what should I do with all this like clarity, you know? and like, I'm constantly trying to like extract value or purpose or meaning out of experiences instead of just letting the experience be the purpose, be the meaning. And for the first time I felt that like it just like took me there, and I lied back. And people have different experiences when they take ayahuasca, and like some people are like like rolling around in pain. Some people are vomiting. And I noticed that like part of me, maybe like my normal self was looking around like, I don't know if it's like hitting me right. Like, cause I'm not experiencing that like other people are. Like I feel bad. I feel.
Those are the famous last words, of course.
No, but like I felt amazing. I felt absolutely amazing. But it was just like, I felt okay, just lied back down. And for 8 hours, I literally was just like lying down almost like in kind of a half seated position and taken through a journey into my soul, like in this insane way. I won't go too deep into it, but one of the things that I do remember is it was like these layers. Well, first of all, it felt like there was an entity to my left that was kind of greenish. Just want to throw that out there. And this was like this entity that almost felt like a doctor of sorts. It was kind of going through this experience with me, kind of like guiding me through it in a way. And it felt like there was some communication happening, but very tough to explain how that is nonverbal. And exploring through my soul got to this point where it was just like, I could see this universe inside of my chest that felt like everything that existed in life was inside my chest at once. And I was like, why isn't this out there? Like, why can't I release this? And then I saw this like cascade of like shields above me, like blocking it. And each shield was attached to this tether. And I got to like go through certain tethers and they're attached to memories, and those memories, it was just like this insane like story.
How did that relate to mud water?
So coming back from that, one of the most transformational things that a psychedelic experience can give to you, I think, is a new outlook on like the day-to-day of life. It's not necessarily the experience itself. It's like all of a sudden I thought differently about what I was putting in my body. I thought differently about what I was drinking, how I opened the day, and began working with an individual named Shems, who you've had on your podcast.
He's the man.
Sort of as
He's
like
a spiritual gangster.
Yeah.
I love him. He looks deeply into your eyes and tells you the truth.
Yeah.
Gives it to you straight. It's very hard, but it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
he does so in a very gentle way, though.
It's
It's like yes, go deeper.
yeah, brother. He's like, he's someone who you would think wouldn't be such a hardcore badass, and then he just gets right to the core. He's like almost like a Tony Robbins character in that way. He's just done a lot of work.
Yeah.
I would say that he's helped me immensely. He's helped you immensely.
Yeah.
So you around that time were
he fights
working
with like
Shems.
a very sharp sword, but it's got like a foam sheath on the outside. And
Yes.
he sometimes like reveals it to you. He's like, I got this, but then he keeps it in there during the sessions.
Exactly.
And you're like, okay, I'm following you.
Yes.
William Wallace, take me to the promised land.
Exactly.
So I started working with him as sort of like an integration practice. But what I really wanted to work with him on is like, what can I build into my day to day that sort of keeps me in this elevated state and keeps me like unearthing some of the things that I had begun. And so I worked with him. I think we initially agreed to like 3 months, but it ended up just extending into basically a full year, culminating into like ending maybe 2 weeks after I started MUD. And so while working with him, I really started to integrate what I'd maybe started in India, compounded in this ayahuasca journey, and then slowly built into like daily practices, some of which was breath work. So he was starting to introduce me to various forms of breath work, not like the transcendental, but different forms of nasal breathing. And then different just forms of like being conscious in certain situations, like at the office or with friends, that I started just to bring into my day to day. And I really felt that all of those things contributed in hindsight to me feeling very strong when starting the company, and sort of, I guess you describe it as courageous. Like I wasn't unaware of the fears. I wasn't unaware of the cliffs that I could fall off or the financial situation or anything. But like courage is sort of continuing on, right? And I felt like he helped me build courage. And so, yeah, bringing us from there, like I said, I was maxed out to the fullest. I was working full time, coming home on my lunch breaks and taking things to the post office and then working. But I felt like due to those tools, I had a lot more capacity than I'd ever had in my life to handle stress. And I feel like that's a key component to starting a company, because there's so many unknowns. There's so many you're kind of like playing like whack-a-mole. Like there's so many things you don't know, like a little thing pops up and you got to smash it down. Like there's all these little issues that arise, and you need a lot of strength and energy to do that. And then you need like a ways and tools, I think, to handle that stress, or you'll literally break or you'll quit. And that's why most companies do.
What were the biggest problems you were trying to solve in that initial phase?
In the initial phase, there wasn't too many problems. I was trying to prove out that there was product market fit. So that was like the main goal. And that was, I had to do that in order to raise money, and I had to raise money in order to work on it full time. So it was kind of.
What does product market fit mean?
Well, so you have, it's the ability for a product to essentially meet the market's demands. So like anybody can create a product, but if nobody wants to buy it, that means there's no market, right? You have a product, no market. Or you could see there's a huge opportunity, like there's a lot of people who need X, but if you don't create a product that meets their needs, then you don't have the product. And so product market fit means you have a product that meets a market that's worth pursuing. And with an investor will, try to look at like how big is that market, and that ultimately can kind of allow them to forecast the potential of your business and the potential of the opportunity for what their cash could be multiplied to.
That's a vulnerable space as opposed to working as an underling at another company, because you're not really putting yourself out there in that position.
Oh yeah.
But you now are like, yo, this shit's muddy and it's good and people are going to want it. Mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. The founder definitely holds most of the stress. Like when you're working at a company, it's like you try to do your best job and your best work. Ultimately, like hopefully you have a little bit of equity, so you have some skin in the game. But compared to the founder, I mean, they're dealing with it's everything on the line for them, for sure. But I liked that. Like I had co-founded 2 companies previously as a co-founder. At this time, I was like a solo founder, so it was a little more intense possibly. But to be totally honest, like I had like zero doubt in it, like in it working at that time. Like it was just, there's nothing that like I was like, this, it's gonna work out. Like I was literally like I was in debt, but I had somehow opened a credit card, and by continuously paying it off was able to increase the max limit to 20K, but I was like maxing that out, like it was pretty intense. It had to work.
Yeah. Yeah, you're what's the analogy? You're falling off a cliff and building an airplane on the way down.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
What did your mornings look like?
Yeah, so I was living in Venice, really close to the beach, luckily. And so I would wake up at around 7 and I would go run on the sand. I'd fill up a hydro flask with mud at the time. I guess, yeah, this was after it was launched, but even before, this was my morning routine that I continued through those first, pretty much still do this in some capacity. Run on the beach, find a spot about a mile in, and do a round of breath work. So I was doing like Wim Hof meditations or breath works at the time, where I was doing 3 rounds of 11 breaths with a breath hold. And then I would do a 10-minute, 20-minute visualization, sort of like a derivative of Joe Dispenza's work. But at that point, I sort of knew some of the things that I wanted to manifest in the world. So I would just sit there and tap into that belief state and really like embody the feelings of the outcomes that I like, pretty much putting myself in the position as though those were already true, what I was trying to transpire.
What were the, if you can remember any, like the sentences that you would actually speak to yourself in that state in the morning on the beach?
Yeah, some is like, I'm grateful to be financially free. I'm grateful to have found my voice. Like these types of things where it's like you're literally speaking it as though it's already happened, but allowing, like even speaking it out loud at times, and feeling what that feels like. When you speak something like that out loud, you really can feel your doubt come around. Like you're like, yeah, that's bullshit, son. And that's super interesting, and that allows you to kind of identify some of where that doubt is, and then you work on that, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm fucking great, like you're getting it. And you see this with like Tony Robbins and Conor McGregor, like people, like elite athletes, they really speak things into existence. And then you see like a lot of athletes talk shit too, but there's like a difference where you see like somebody actually deep down in their gut believes it, and it's really the only individual can know that. But I think the more you do it, you can kind of see it in people. Like, do they really believe what they're saying?
So you would sit on the beach and be looking out at the Pacific Ocean and actually say these sentences?
Sometimes out loud. Yeah. Yeah, I looked like a crazy person, probably. It's great.
Just like all the rest of the people in the Venice Beach.
Yeah. And then I would come home and, drink. I was intermittent fasting, drink tons of water, start the workday.
You would intermittent fast often?
Yeah, pretty much every day.
So what was your diet like during this time?
My diet has always been very peasant-like, I guess you could say. But I mean, at this time, I was eating lots of what's called khichdi. What's called khichdi. This is like an Ayurvedic. It's an Ayurvedic rice, and like it's basmati rice, dal, and some different spices. And I started eating this on an Ayurvedic cleanse once, and I found it to be amazing. And basically, the concept is you could like do a mono diet on just khichdi and basically do a cleanse. Like simulate the benefits of a cleanse without starving yourself, because it digests so well. Like it's so easy for your stomach to digest. So you can give your stomach, your digestive system a break while not starving yourself. And it was just really easy for me to make a huge batch of it for the week. And honestly, like I would get made fun of because I would just eat this pretty much every day. And I would eat like eggs and very simple other items. Like I really, up until recently, like didn't value like cooking and food. Like I was just like, as long as I eat relatively healthy things, like I don't really care what form it comes in. Like I don't care about how it's plated. Like I just need to enter into my stomach.
Yeah, it's just
and like
nutrition.
The ROI of spending an extra like hour in prep time and clean time of like making this meal.
Return on investment.
There's no return on investment when you compare it to like just eating a bowl of 3-day-old khichdi. Like,
and you're working 18 hours a day.
And it was completely out of necessity too.
Right.
Like I literally didn't have time.
Was there anything that you would do to blow off steam, like listening to podcasts or, people that could just allow you to take your mind off of this one goal? And was there any importance in that?
For sure. Jiu-jitsu is a huge thing. So I was training jiu-jitsu at the time. And that really helped. Anytime you're doing something that's very hard and puts you on the brink of quitting, will kind of take you out of everything else and bring you into that present moment. So that definitely helped. And then I was listening to a lot of Theo Vaughn podcasts, and Theo Vaughn he's a comedian, and he has a podcast where he just, he just bullshits like the entire podcast, and it's fucking hilarious. And it really it just transported me out of the stresses of the day, and it just made life more fun and silly. Brought a silliness to my evening. Like I would listen to his podcast while I was like slaving away in the commercial kitchen, like mixing, covered in powders, like mixing things. Yeah. And it was very healing, honestly.
You could talk about a pomegranate for 15 minutes. Yeah, and it just goes so deep. Funny.
And it was hilarious. So that was like my medicine was some Theo Vaughn laughs, and then training jiu-jitsu. I probably only had time to train like twice a week, something like that.
Right. So bring me into the financials at this stage. So you have this credit card, like for super layman, how do the finances work at this stage? Because from the outside, it could seem that there was really no issue. Like, sweet, people are buying this stuff. You got the credit card, like you're making money, and people are thinking like, whoa, Shane's making all this money with, how much are you selling these for? Like, damn, he's probably crushing it. Like not actually thinking about the money that needs to go back into the business. Paint that picture of the finances. Yeah,
for people who've never run a startup company, especially in the tech space, but even in the consumer packaged goods space, it's like most companies when they're growing, if they're growing, which is a good thing, aren't profitable. Like they're not making money. And that's because like you are repurchasing inventory for the next month. And if you're growing the next month, you're buying more inventory than you did the previous month. And then you likely are growing through marketing spend. So your marketing spend is growing simultaneously with that. so you're putting more out and you're getting more back, but like you're not really going to realize that until a certain inflection point where the profit margin supersedes like your marketing spend. Or maybe you slow down your growth rate and you kind of have this rebound effect of recurring customers coming back and buying your product. So this is especially true early on when your margins are likely very low. So your margin is like how much profit you're making after you buy all the cost of the goods that go into the product itself, right? The tin, the label, the box, the stickers you're putting in it, and then all the powders, and then the time it takes to make it. All that is cost, and then you sell it at a subtle profit margin on top, right? And at that time, I wasn't really worried about profit margin at all. Like I was thinking very long term, like I could figure all that out eventually. What we needed to prove was product market fit. I needed to get the product in people's hands. If people wanted the product, that's all we needed to prove, because we can find a way to get that product cheaper through scale and through making supplier partnerships. And so at the time I was just ordering products on Amazon. We could have gone, like I could have locked in, found suppliers. We were at enough scale where we would have been small time for a lot of these people, because they're dealing with large companies that are ordering, thousands of kilos, and we were ordering very small amounts, and really only could, due to my financial situation, order like 2 weeks of inventory in advance, and then had to like sell all that and order in the next 2 weeks.
But if I'm a supplier, do I give you a better price if you buy a higher volume?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so that's where you really get your breaks.
Same with volume. Like if you're like on a totally small scale, like let's say you want to get some t-shirts made of your logo.
Same thing.
It's going to be $40 if you buy one t-shirt, but that price will drop if you want to buy 10 in bulk.
Yeah. So like I looked into it for a couple of our ingredients, and I found that, I was an Amazon Prime member, and what you pay on shipping from these suppliers, like I was saving in free shipping on Amazon. So really it was net neutral. Like I wouldn't have saved even at that time to go with a formal supplier. It would have been a way bigger headache, and I would have had to put more cash down before every purchase order. So I was just continuing on as usual and barely making it, really, like probably losing money most months, but knowing that like that's why, right? Like I knew that we can get the profit margin down, and most experienced seasoned investors will see that too. What they really want to see is, do people want what you're selling? Like we'll find a way to make it. So
were you doing ads? Were you doing ads at this time?
Yeah. So
on Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was learning how to run Facebook and Instagram ads at the time. And like I was saying before, like advertising similar to product, it's like something you can do if people want it. Like if you're making ads and people aren't buying it, then you literally can't run ads because you're running out of money. Like, but we found I started to create some ads that were, really resonating with people. And a lot of those ads were related to, it was a derivatives of Fuck Your Coffee, essentially. It was like really positioning ourselves as like a coffee alternative. So that was like one main thread. But probably the best thread at the time was very contradictory to what you'd read in like a marketing 101 class. And I was just like telling my story in the copy. So like paragraphs of text in the copy for some of these ads, and like that it was just working amazing. And I think like whenever you can zig where everybody's zagging, then all of a sudden people they just like double take that ad, right? Like there's so many ads on Instagram. Like you got to sort of differentiate yourself in an authentic way, and also like sell the product too.
Right. So you were using more text in your Instagram ads.
Tons of
and
text,
it was funny.
Like
it honestly, it sounded like a text that you would send me.
That's what I was trying to get across. It was like
the funny heckles that we would send each other.
That's what I would think when I would write. It was like, I'm texting Kyle about this product. And that just started to work really well. So yeah, that's another main thing, or that's a way that you can diagnose product market fit. On one hand is how do you acquire customers? Can you acquire customers? Like, can you get people to buy into the promise of your product? And then the back end of that is once they get the product, does it deliver on that promise, and do they want to purchase again, right? So those are like the two main factors there. And we were working on that was the main thing that I was looking to test, and that was the thing that was working, and that's why I felt very good about maxing out the credit card in my own personal health and wellness, in order just to get more proof points, a couple more months in, to eventually be able to work on it full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Running out of money. Are you still doing this all in your kitchen, or had you moved to a commercial kitchen?
A commercial kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are commercial kitchens like?
So yeah, it's like a large, commercial warehouse type environment that is all spec'd for commercial cooking. And so there'll be a bunch of different stations. And each station has like a stove and a sink and like all these basic, appliances, that you would use. And so that's where you see like meal prep companies in there. And I went in there like having no idea like how to use any of these appliances. Like honestly, I make kitchery, guys. I've never cooked a meal other than kitchery. I've literally cooked like grilled cheese sandwiches and kitchery, like, and popcorn.
It's all about calories for me, guys.
Yeah. And so the first night I'm in there, I'm kind of like trying to pretend like I know what I'm doing a little bit. Like the kitchen manager's like walking me around. He's like, okay, you're at station 4. And here's like, what do you need? And like all of our mixers over here, this is over there. And I was like, I need one of the mixers. And it's like this 5-foot tall machine that has this big paddle in it, and it goes into a bowl, and there's a cage kind of protecting the bowl. And I wheel that over to my station, and I start, I get my formula out, and I fill up the bowl. I'm like, I'm not sure exactly how high I should fill the bowl. Like the bowl, like I should fill it up to the top. Like I'm trying to maximize production here. Yeah. So I fill it up to the top, and this is like the bowl isn't like closed in any way. Like I don't know what I was doing. And then I was like, how do I turn this thing on? Like I had no idea how to turn the machine on. And
so you're still fulfilling all the orders yourself.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And I'm just like, all right, like there's a green button here, and there's like this little knob that didn't have any numbers on it, but you could like rotate this knob, and it had like dots that like increased in size, and I like rotated it over to the right and pressed the green button, and it just was like turbo mode. And just blew up like a cloud of cacao and cinnamon into the air. And I didn't know how to turn it off. I had to run over and pull the plug out of the wall. And there's people like next to me, and they're like making like sandwiches for like these meal prep orders. And it's
like a vegan salad. You're just like dusting everyone
the cacao
with mud.
Vegan salad. It was so
like
gnarly.
It's like sulfur out of a super volcano. Just dusts everything.
Yeah, that exactly what happened. And I was like, oh man.
So
like we need a co-packer.
We're gonna need a bigger co-packer.
Yeah, and a co-packer is basically like a partner that has manufacturing capacity, and they make your product at scale. But similar to like the supplier thing, the ingredients, like we were at decent scale, but like not quite enough to get a co-packer's attention. And then even so, it takes months to onboard with a co-packer, and then they have to find all your ingredients. And then it was kind of like we were growing so fast that it was like we had to figure out a way to take a step back in order to like move forward at higher speed, and I just wasn't quite ready to do that yet. But yeah, fully like at night at this point after work, filling up my van at the time with all of our ingredients and driving to this commercial kitchen.
Your little transit van?
Yeah.
Vanny
DeVito, and like loading like hundreds of pounds of powder into the kitchen, mixing them all together, bringing them out, and we would package it up. And we shortly after got kicked out of that kitchen space. Not the whole facility, but they moved us into this like enclosed room because we were dusting people's sandwiches.
I'm just gonna take this opportunity to let everyone know, Shane is one of the dirtiest people I've ever met.
No.
For sure.
I've got a clean conscience.
You're like a thoroughbred racehorse. You just focus on what it is you're doing with blinders and the dust and paint.
I'd say I'm not dirty. I don't like being dirty, and I acknowledge it. It's just I have higher priorities.
Right.
And I'm very task oriented, and I know what's important in life, and so yeah, basically it.
Also known as you notoriously leave candy wrappers in your friends' cars.
Do not eat candy anymore. That was in college.
I'm on the road to greatness, Kyle.
I was very crafty in college too. Like I remember one time Venmo had just launched and I was in San Diego and nobody had heard of Venmo in Santa Cruz. And I took I basically had no money in college either. And I, at the time Venmo was giving out $6 for any person you can get to sign up as like a referral fee. And I took our friend Ramon out. I was like, let's go grab some lunch, like at a burrito spot. And we show up and I order my burrito and I'm like, tapping my pockets. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot my wallet, man. Like, have you heard of Venmo? He's like, no. I'm like, dude, you sign up. I can just transfer you cash right now. And get him to sign up and I get like a little ding. It's like, I get $6 and I transfer it over to him. And he's just like, you fuck. So I mean, I got by, I got by.
Just part of the hustle.
Yeah, part of the hustle. And grind.
I have a question about the tins.
Yeah.
How do you come up with that idea? It's a very unique package for a product.
Right. I think part of it is having a beginner's mind, like coming into it with like I just didn't think that there was any way that it should be. I think most people, if they go straight to like the co-packer route, most co-packers are going to like demand that you use bags because it's way easier. You can put it on like a full line, assembly line, and it seals automatically and everything. And at the time I didn't have that wasn't a benefit to me. So I was literally just like, what is the best packaging I can use? Like I had no thinking of like, what is the most convenient packaging I could use? It was literally like, what's the best? So the initial thing I used was a glass jar, actually. I obviously wanted it to be environmentally friendly as well. Like most bags, I mean, we ship bags now that are 100% recyclable, but like I'm not like happy with that. Like we're constantly have a quarterly project to find legit compostable bags, which is like really tough. There's a lot of people that claim it, about that. But that was pretty much it. Started with jars, and then jars were really heavy and they could crack. You don't want glass and things you drink.
And was it more expensive for you to ship?
So it was more expensive to ship. And then I found a tin supplier, matte black. It just like really fit the brand because at the time I was putting these black labels on these jars and I was just like, this is perfect. Like I like to browse around and take in inputs and just like feel how certain things feel in a very, like it sounds very woo-woo, but like intuition is very important to me and something that I felt like I built up through painting, like where I would just like see things on the canvas that I can't really explain and I just put like a color here and there. If you've seen my paintings, it's like there's lines and colors in various spots that really don't have or need an explanation, but it really came from like something in me that was just like it belongs there and I put it there and it felt better. And starting to apply that to business, I would just take in different options and just try to feel into like what felt right, which helps with speed, obviously. But
after shitting on you for your candy wrapper habit, I will give you a compliment, which is that you have intuitively a very good mind for design. Like I've known you since high school. You made the Surfing for Change logo, which was like this early little YouTube documentary series that I did. You made the logo for the Motherfucker Awards. You made the logo for my podcast. Like all of them, in my opinion, are dope. And a lot of people really like and talk about the branding of Mudwater.
For sure.
When you are going into any one of those projects, are there any questions that you're asking yourself or a process that you go through to come up with the right logo and branding for a particular project?
I think any creative process, it's sort of like a lifelong accumulation of inputs that contribute, of course. And then when you're going into like designing for a specific thing, you want to tap into that, into that space where the more years of design you have, the more inputs and inspirations you have, and those sources of inspiration slowly become fuzzy about what they actually are, and you just kind of remember certain shapes or contrasts or combination of elements, and that's where it starts to become your own thing. And so part of that is it just takes time, I think. So when I sit down, it's like a lot of times I'm like, I don't really know what it's going to be. And there's like a little bit of anxiety that occurs where you're like, I don't know if I have it. Like, what's the idea? Like, you're looking at a blank sheet of paper. But after looking through your own internal hard drive of inspiration, and then even browsing around other websites and different things, you start to find something. And then I just start working. I just start like putting things on whether it's on paper or in Illustrator, whatever it is, just start like making ideas, putting it on paper. And then I find that around like the 2-3 hour mark, I start to kind of like a story starts to come through in a way where, certain elements seem to have like a connection, you know, like in very abstract ways, like certain typefaces to certain colors or certain shapes to certain letters, like, and I just start to see patterns in it in a way that I wouldn't had previously. And it really took like hours of just being immersed in that space to occur.
When it comes to the MUD /WTR logo, how many iterations of that logo did you go through?
0, like 1, you know, it just like, I'm not kidding. I didn't touch it. Like, it was, here it is. Like, there was nothing else. So I grabbed my computer and I knew it was going to be called MUD. And MUD is not, I think the domain name for MUD is probably like $400,000, something like that. And I liked the slash in the water because I view our company scaling to more like different verticals. Like, we might launch a media arm. It's like MUD/media. We may launch physical locations. Like, we have launched pop-ups and we call them huts, like MUD huts. So MUD/hut. We may make like a bar, like an edible version, like MUD bar, you know? So it gave us the ability to apply that brand towards a lot of different form factors.
So you thought about that at the beginning. You thought, I want to have this be a big enough umbrella that we can go in all these different directions.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that the logo of a company could determine the places that you can go with it or make it more difficult to pivot.
Well, I knew where we wanted to go, and then I wanted to make sure the logo could accommodate that. And like, not having the slash like made it less able to be accommodating of more verticals, right? So like, that's kind of why that's there. And then I viewed that as something that the slash could be something that we could own in a way. So we're probably going to launch an apparel line, and that's going to be like the main element. Like, we're not going to put branding all over it, but we will put the slash on it.
And why just WTR?
Well, aesthetically, you have like 3 letters and 3 letters on both sides. That was like one of the main things. I think it differentiates us from other brands. It's just simple.
And did you trademark it immediately?
No, I trademarked it probably 6-7 months after, like right around the time that we raised.
Okay.
It costs some money to trademark. It's not a lot, but it costs some money.
All right, so let's talk about raising. So tell me about a man named Paul DeJoe.
Yeah, so I had worked with Paul in a previous company, and I sent him a text right when I launched the website, and he was like, oh, that's that disgusting drink you made. Try to get me to drink in Colombia. And I was like, yep. And then over the next like couple weeks, I would just send him like the sales summaries for every, like when we have big order days and whatnot. And it was like, it's happening.
Right.
And I was talking to
just to remind people, in the first podcast we did, Paul was the founder of Cavalry.
Which was the company that I joined as a co-founder, right, coming home from India. And yeah, so he was the CEO of that company. But more importantly, like working with him, we realized that we have very complementary skill sets, where his background's in business, finance, and he's an amazing like people management person. And then my background more on the design side, the product side, and marketing side. So the two of us was like, we could just bounce ideas off each other in a way that was a very holistic view of what a company could look like. And when Cavalry didn't work out, we always had this like, we were planning a trip to Nicaragua before Cavalry worked out. So we were always like, what's going to take us to Nicaragua after that? Like when I was working at my next company, we kept in touch all the time, and it was always like, we got to start something soon. Like let's get this back. Let's get the band back together. You know, let's get back to Nicaragua. And so when I launched this company, though he didn't understand the mushroom space, he was a 5 cup of coffee a day drinker, though experienced tons of anxiety. So I knew that it would be amazing for him. But I couldn't convince him to drink it when I was in Colombia. But after launching it, he was like, if you're going to go in on this, like he was definitely believed in me. And so he was a part of it early on, helping me like set up the LLC, helping me, just guiding me like, yo, you should reach out to every single customer, like very, very all in on that. Cause he also wanted to see if there was product market fit here, cause this could take us to Nicaragua. And so he became like sort of an advisor early on. And then, 6 months in, I remember I had a phone call with him, where I remember walking out of my house onto the beach and just calling him, and literally was like tearing up because I was just like, I felt like I was underwater. I would wake up every morning just feeling like gasping for air, because there's just so many things that I had to keep in my head, managing so many different tasks, and like, oh, I forgot to reach out to that customer, like this opportunity came up, or this investor reached out, like all of these things, and working full time, and like making sure the people that were coming over to my house were getting paid.
You're still working at this other company?
Working full time at another company. Because of my like personal financial situation. And so I'm walking down on the beach and I'm like, dude, I can't quit my job because I can't keep up with I need to have, like, I would have to move out of my house, and ultimately probably would have to shut down the company because I can't afford to keep it going. So I need my job just to like keep it up, but I can't keep working full time because I literally am dying. I can't think straight. Like I literally manage my day. If things weren't on the calendar, like it didn't exist. Like I was just like constantly in this like fight or flight mode pretty much. And he was just as normal. Paul is great because you can call him when you are so sad, stressed out, angry, and he's just calm in the storm, calm in the eye of the storm, and always has an answer that like makes you feel better. And this one made me feel very good because he was like, yo, I'm wiring you $25,000. And if you don't accept it, like, I'm not going to help you anymore. This is too good. This is something very rare. The testimonials I'm seeing, like he's older than me. He's run multiple businesses. And he's like, I haven't seen anything like it. Like, you're going to go in tomorrow and tell your CEO that you're leaving, and like, let's do this. Obviously $25,000 is enough to get the company like completely off the ground, but it's enough where it could bridge the gap between that moment until we found actual investors. And Paul is not an investor. Paul is like, that was like money he was pulling out for like home savings and stuff. And I didn't even know how to answer that. Like, that's the most generous thing I've ever heard in my life. And I don't even think I answered. And like, he hung up and then texted me like, check the account. And I was like,
oh, that's such a gangster move.
Yeah. He didn't even let me say no.
Fuck yeah, Paul. Just hang up the phone.
Yeah, gangster.
That's a mic drop moment.
Full on.
Oh, I just got
Ohio
the chills.
Gangster.
Oh, man. I'm sweaty.
And so I went in and I told my CEO at the time, Lauren, she's an amazing founder and CEO, like badass woman. And I was kind of nervous, and she knew that I was like slanging some mud on the side, like around the office. And I was like, look, like, it's tough because I really was a big part of that company, and I loved working with everybody, but it's like, look, this is, that mud stuff, like.
She's like, yeah, it's on your shoe.
Yeah. I'm gonna be like doing that full time soon, and like really love your support. And she was so supportive. I mean, I think most she was a solo founder to start, and so I think that there was no reason to fear that, because she knew exactly what I was going through and was just like completely an encouragement, and was like, look, like, do you want to maybe like slowly phase out? You can work like 1-2 days a week and like still get paid, and yeah, it just worked out amazing. And ended up starting the fundraising spree. And fundraising is no joke. It's a full-time job. So this is like put on top of the actual job of starting the company, then all of a sudden you're out there like basically a salesperson for the company in a sense. Because when you're fundraising, you're selling a portion of the company for future value.
Any great stories that can illustrate what it's actually like to fundraise?
So yeah, the first person I reached out, well, first I made a deck, right? Like, which is something I knew how to do, about the only thing I knew how to do in regards to fundraising. Built a pitch deck, basically positioned our company in a really good way, highlighting everything that we were doing. So I felt good about that. I felt good about the presentation part.
What does that mean? How were you able to highlight your company in a way that looked good?
Oh, I mean, I knew the elements in the deck I knew the elements that should be in a deck that would be very appealing to investors.
What were they?
Growth, product market fit essentially, but broken down into growth, retention, testimonials, market size, that kind of thing. Those are like the main things.
Right. Did you have a testimonial from Kelly Slater?
Yeah. So yeah, probably like 4 months after launch, our mutual friend Matt Myers invited me to go out to a WSL event at Slater's Wave Ranch, and I brought some mud, and I wrote the first day we went in there. I wrote a little note that said, "I heard you don't like coffee. Like, you'll love this." Like, no, didn't sign it or anything, and I gave it to a friend. Our friend Matt, who at the time was team manager for Rip Curl. I already told Slater's team about this, but I was like, "Yo, put this in Slater's locker," and he snuck it in there, and didn't hear anything about it until I was on one of my morning ritual beach runs, like a month later, and I get a notification that Slater just tagged you in a story, and he tagged Mud Water, and it said, "Way better than coffee for me," smiley face, whatever. But I was like, holy shit, it worked, and fully used that testimonial to our advantage. But yeah, things like that. We're going in the deck. And then the next phase of fundraising, though, is being able to verbally convey that story in a way that's inspiring and prove to somebody that you're the person that's fit to bring this business to life. And then the last thing is like finding the people that you should pitch to, right? And that's typically the toughest part for a lot of entrepreneurs, is building that network. And so I started with somebody that I knew from Cavalry days. Paul and I did a team trip down to Cozumel one time. Because we were a remote company, we would travel every like 3 months together to meet up. We didn't have to spend money on an office, so that was kind of our office fund. And we one trip flew down some people that we wanted to be our formal advisors and eventual investors in the company. And one of them, his name was Zach Coleus, and he runs an AngelList syndicate. And AngelList is a company started by Naval Ravikant. Is amazing. He has an amazing podcast, but he's like basically a philosopher, but also really big tech mogul. And he started this company that allowed non-VC types to corral in money from various people who also had money, but wanted to get into these tech deals that were typically reserved for like the button-up suit and tie venture capital companies. So basically like somebody who people felt and agreed that had great taste and insights in the next big thing, they would be like, whatever you're investing in, like, I want to put some money into that. And so they would create a fund called a syndicate, and they would syndicate capital from hundreds of people and put towards companies. And so Zach Coleus was one of the first syndicate runners on AngelList, and he ended up running the first syndicated $1 billion deal on AngelList, which gave him tons of notoriety around the industry. Like, everybody knew who he was. And we flew him down to Cozumel, and we all had a great time. But one night, everybody went to sleep, and him and I were like, we should do something. We went over to this place called Señor Frogs, which is like a Margaritaville type vibe, like yardstick margaritas and like those big slushy machines and all that. And we just like had an amazing night, and like on the dance floor, like singing karaoke, like just talking about VCs and startups and everything. Didn't really think anything of it, but through that, like we had formed like a really cool bond. He didn't even advise or invest our previous company, but I reached out to him. I was like, I'm in San Francisco. I'd love to meet up. We ended up meeting up, and I walked him through what we were doing. He was like, holy shit. Like what we were doing was impressive, like what we had done in the previous 6 months. But he'd only invested in tech companies, like never invested in a food product. And food products have kind of like a different trajectory. Typically they're like the financials can look slightly different. And he was just like, man, I want to invest, like I'm in, but it's contingent on you finding an investor that's also who's an expert in food and bev. Like I have amazing access to capital, and I know the ins and outs of maybe more so when you're like at massive scale, but like I can't feel confident without somebody else being along my side. And so we use that as like a bargaining chip, right? Like Zach's in, like who else is in?
Right. It's like a who's going to the party thing.
Yeah. Zach's coming. And then we got a lot of calls. Like literally my schedule is completely booked up. Like I probably took like 100 meetings over the course of the next like 2 months. And one meeting in particular that turned out to be sort of his wingman on considering this deal was a guy named Alex Malamatidis, and he ran a fund called Nabari over in New York. And I had never been to New York, but they reached out to us along with 3 other VC funds, and I was like, we should fly to New York, Paul and I, and go pitch them all. And got a plane ticket. We had a red-eye flight. We didn't have a lot of time. Like we were mixing product at that time, you know, like, so we literally flew out there for 2 days and flew back because we had to keep up with inventory. Paul's historically a very troubled sleeper, and so he recommended that we get some edibles. And I've like edibles are not my jam. But I was like,
I feel a good story coming.
I was like, I haven't had edibles in like a long time. So if we just play it safe, like it should, like a lot of people eat edibles. Like it's fine. Like we'll get a good night's sleep and we'll be primed and ready for our investor pitch the following morning at like 10 a.m., an hour after we arrive. And so I go to MedMen and I tell the guy, I'm like, yo, I have a red-eye flight. I'm just trying to like get some sleep. Like I'm not looking for any sort of like life-changing experience. Like we're looking to get some edibles, but like keep it, like relax, right? And he's like, I got just the stuff. He like gives me these like gummy bear things. He's like, just have one.
It's like Rogan's joke where he's like, how much should I take? Just a leg.
Dude, it's crazy. Like you eat these like an ear off a gummy bear. But like, so he tells me to just eat one. I don't even know how many milligrams there were, but it was supposedly pretty light. Bring him back, and we're getting ready to go to the airport. I'm actually driving to the airport and parking in like the airport parking, but I ended up taking my dose like before getting in the car. And we get in the car, and I took my dose, he took his, and I'm like pulling into the airport parking lot, and I was just like, oh boy, like I'm already starting to feel it. I like put on the hood of my sweatshirt, and I'm like, Paul, I'm just gonna let you know, like I want you to really take the lead on getting us on the plane.
Paul, I just want you to know I love you, man.
No, like literally I needed him to take the lead on like every decision. That
if
went
something
from, like,
should happen.
Yeah, that point until we were on the plane. Like I couldn't talk, and I was just like, this is fucked.
Paul's like, why are you holding my hand?
And he's like, I don't feel anything. He's like kind of like jealous almost. I'm like, dude, you don't want this. Like the thought of like parking my car and going from there and like getting on this shuttle and like going to the air, like I was like, this is a lot.
You're like, I can raise millions of dollars, no problem, but the idea of getting on this plane is just too much.
Seriously, it was a lot. And basically I probably just like moaned more than like said any words in that. I was just kind of like, he's like, you good? I'm like, And we finally get to the plane, and we're sitting in different spots. Like I'm in the back, and I just like go to my seat, and I'm like super thirsty, but I didn't really want to like ask anybody for things. I was like scared to like talk. Like
they'll know.
No. I was like, fuck this. Like couldn't really sleep. I was like in and out of this daze, and I was just like, this is fucked. I'm over edibles. And it was like a very turbulent flight too. We finally land, and I get off the plane, and I see Paul, and I'm like, bro, like, how are you? Like, I'm still feeling it. And he just has this like crazy look in his eyes. Like, he's like, dude. And he like looks down at his pants, and he just has the Salton Sea on his jeans. Like he pissed his pants on the flight. And I'm like, awesome. And I take I instantly, like, this is like flow state. Like, this is just what I do instinctively. I don't even know what I was doing. Like, I just took a photo of him and I sent it to my dad. Like, that was like first thing I thought of doing. I don't know why. I was just like, this is the best thing ever.
Flow state. So I take a photo and send it to the investors. I don't know why.
No. And I was like, what happened? He's like, well, I didn't feel anything. And so I took another one and then like still didn't feel anything. And I walked by to go pee and you were like snoring in the back and I got really jealous. So I took another one. And then he said he was just gone.
A fateful decision.
But he peed his pants sleeping. Yeah. But we went out and pitched 3 investors that day and ended up closing them all. And
it's what you call trouble in the winner's circle.
Yeah, and came home. And because due to that, Zach was in and we closed just over $1 million from that trip.
Some people say pissing your pants on a flight is good luck.
You're not cool unless you pee your pants.
It's a good omen. You ain't cool unless you pee your pants.
So, yeah.
How was it hard to not act obsequiously around investors?
So those first couple meetings were like, I was definitely a little nervous. Like it was one of them that we went to, it was just like a bunch of like suit and tie, like financial guys, and put it on the big screen and walked them through the deck. And they're like, what is lion's mane? Like, I have like no idea what's going on. Luckily they had brought in one of their associates who was like all into this stuff. And me and him, like through the presentation, like eye contact on him, like we're really connecting. And like, I think he probably did a lot of behind the scenes work, like filling in the gaps. But I mean, at the end of the day, they really want to see the numbers, and the presentation is one part of it. Then the due diligence is sort of cool. Like we buy all, like we're in, but we want to make sure that like all this is true. Right. And so that's like the part where you kind of get it over the hump. But really, like, I felt pretty comfortable just being myself. Like, we were launching a pretty unique product, and I felt like that served us well. Just like,
and you had the numbers on
you,
so you had impressive numbers
totally.
On your side.
I didn't have to like pad anything, which
right.
was super helpful. Like, I don't know if I would be a good like wartime type presenter where I gotta like dupe people into, which like some people are very good at it, and it's not that it's a bad thing. Like maybe there's some elements of their growth rate that were off-putting, and there's some concerns, but like they needed that cash and ultimately proved out to be successful. But like I definitely feel very good and comfortable like really getting people excited about things that they should feel excited about, but like getting them really into it. So
what did it feel like to get that wire transfer?
Yeah, so from the point of people agree, like saying they're in, to actually money coming in can take a long time. Part of that is that due diligence aspect, and then I think this was around like Halloween of 2018, and I remember we were really close. They were working out the final details of like the contract and everything, because there's always going to be this back and forth of like small terms adjustments, and you're always wondering, okay, well, we just requested this, are they going to come back and be over it, the whole thing, because of that? Like, you don't know. The deal could just fall apart, and you really don't celebrate until the cash is in the bank. So it felt good to get the initial agreement, but I wasn't sleeping really well until we got it in the bank. And that happened ultimately when I was actually at your brother's wedding. So flying down, I had like the final pitch, locking everything in, and then we were kind of working out the kinks with the legal team, and we were supposed to get cash soon. And right when I landed, I remember I got to a dinner with a couple of friends that were all there with you, and I got like an email came through and the wire was transferred, and I was just like, oh, like huge sigh of relief, like all of a sudden I felt like I could breathe again. I felt like I was like on a slack line before, like I could fall off at any moment, and now I felt like I was on a stable like plateau, and I was like, I can sink my teeth into this thing that I'm so passionate about and get paid to do it. Like, and I felt like that was a superpower, because previous I wasn't paying myself through Mudwater. Like I was working harder than I ever had before and getting paid less per hour than I ever had before, basically, when you think about that. And finally now I was like thinking like, cool, like what's going to happen when when I don't have to worry about paying rent and I can focus on this full time. So it was a really exciting moment to think about that. But ultimately I was able to just be like, it's there, I'm at a wedding and I got to have fun finally, like, because I didn't have any social life up until that moment. Like there was literally no time to go out. There's no time to talk to friends. I remember one time you came by, you were in town and I was like, yeah, you can come by. But I was like, you came in and I was like leaving with like buckets and you're like, oh, what
buckets
the
of
fuck
cacao.
is going on?
Is that shit you were showing me at the Bombay Beach Biennale?
Yeah, I just had to kind of.
Was it a little bit at the same time as you got to exhale and I'm sure enjoy it, a feeling of like, oh man, maybe I'm just on a huge slack line now?
Yeah, there's moments of that. Like you really need to, you have to build mental dexterity and just focus on hitting the hammer to the nail and not missing. Like there's pressure there, and every once in a while you look off the edge and you're like, oh shit, it's a long fall. Like I feel that today still, you know? But ultimately I think you fall back on, like, I fell back on a lot of my like rituals and practices that I did to like help keep me in these like states that ultimately got Mud to where it was off the ground, and it kept me in like a good state when the stakes got higher. But yeah, some of the more intense things was like raising money from friends who weren't like even raising money from Paul. Like that was his first ever investment check in a company, and raising money from friends who I knew weren't like balling at all. You know, this was like a portion of their savings, and they were trusting it in me. And so I took it very seriously. It was like a huge honor, honestly. I didn't feel fear too much. I felt a lot of there's like a sacredness to it, and to really commemorate that, I knew I wanted to do something special on my own to really put myself in the position to honor that, like honor the journey that had just begun, really. You know, like it felt like I'd been working on it for years because of the amount of effort, but really it just begun. Like now a group of people believed that there's something here. They're like, cool, go prove it. And what I did was I ended up reaching out to the group that I'd done that ayahuasca journey with, and I had heard that they had been doing these like 3-month microdosing programs where you're actually just microdosing the ayahuasca vine, which actually isn't psychoactive. It isn't, it's the MAO inhibitor, but it's really based on the practice of a dieta, which is probably how they discovered the combination, or how they claim to have discovered the ayahuasca brew, was by listening to the plants. And a dieta is where you really clean out your diet, where you're eating very, very minimal food just in general, but also a minimal variety of food. It's like just like rice. And then you're eating like one plant. There's other things that you can do dietas on, but primarily you'll eat like one plant every day as well. And in this case, it was the ayahuasca vine. And through that experience, like you build this like spiritual relationship with the plant and so on. It gets pretty deep. But really what I was trying to do was sort of commemorate the journey I was on through a very sacred morning ritual. So I was doubling down on the things that had got me to that point. Through this, like I had already had a morning routine, but through this practice, what they guided me through was like, cool, every morning you're going to wake up and you're going to have a couple tablespoons of this ayahuasca vine liquid. In addition to that, you're meditating for like 30 minutes every day. And then you have sort of like this vision, like manifestation type meditation as well that you can pound on top of it. And then throughout that, you're eating a very clean diet, no alcohol for 3 months, or anything. And no alcohol, no drugs for 3 months, and pretty much eating what I was already eating, like in khichdi was great. So yeah, I was already used to that part.
I'm on a dieta.
But it was a really amazing 3 months. It was a really amazing practice. Like to open up that, because it forced me to like think about what I was doing every morning. You know, like I'm here with money supplied to me by close friends and people that believe in me. And I'm thinking about that as I'm like sipping this every morning in this sacred like ceremony. It wasn't about like a psychedelic experience at all. But ended up being, you know, probably a very mind transformative experience in the end, like possibly more so.
I remember going down and seeing you around that time and asked if you wanted to go out and get a drink. And you said, no, I'm not drinking because I don't want to ruin this experience.
Yeah, the other aspect of it was I wanted to be very present to it. Like, what an amazing opportunity to have.
It's like I get to have sex with my fantasy girl. Why would I want to do it drunk?
Exactly. Yeah, I wanted to remember everything that was happening. I wanted to feel it. And I never would want to look back and be like, certain things would have worked out or worked out better had I been more present, been like... I'm a big believer for myself that alcohol really dulls my intuition. And I've seen this through like my creative process, like through art all the time, where like if I'm hungover, I just don't have this, it's a different feeling. And so for me, it was just like, it was like a non-negotiable. Like I was like, there's zero upside in partaking in that that drink or anything that would cloud this experience. Like why? Like, it just wasn't worth it. And so I had a very strong why for not drinking at that point. And so it made it very easy. And probably since that, I've had like less than 20 drink, you know, like I don't drink, like it's for that same reason, but you know, here and there.
Well, you just took on a big round of funding. I think it's a good place to finish this episode. But if you could go back to the Shane that was on that island in India, starting to do that meditation from You're the Placebo, what is the one thing that you would say to that version of yourself?
Watch out for the lizards. You know,
there's a rat behind you.
Yeah, there's a rat in the kitchen with them. I don't know. It's really tough because like you don't want to pull away some of the things that really, really made it happen, and some of those things are hard, and some of those were like it's hard to discern like what was unnecessary struggle and what was very necessary struggle. I think at times I maybe doubted the value in like because I looked around me. Specifically after the time on the island, I traveled to Bali in the Philippines, like was on a surf trip basically, but in much more populated areas with people who were there partying and on their own different kind of journey. And even then I was like still like doing meditations, and I didn't have a job at the time, but I was designing companies. I was like basically working almost full time, just designing ideas and apps. And I was just like, I'm really different. And like, I felt like insecure about that kind of like, I was like, I constantly need to be creating and it feels amazing. But like, sometimes I question myself when I look around and see other people like on completely different programs, having a blast, like doing their thing and not really like, I just felt very isolated, very different. And I think like that was like, it would have been nice to be like encouraged to like, just keep doing that. Cause like, it's going to lead to something amazing. And like embracing that difference, because I knew that that's what it felt the best to me. But sometimes I was like, why can't I just like party with the boys right now? I just wish I would have accepted that a little earlier, but yeah, I did now.
Shane Heath, Thank you so much.
That's our show. If you enjoyed it, please give it a rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. It takes about 60 seconds and it really does help. So thank you to everyone who is giving this show a rating. You can go to trendswithbenefits.com to check out all of our written work. It's where Sara does a lot of her writing. It's where I do a lot of my writing. All over there at trendswithbenefits.com. It's also where you can sign up for our newsletter. Every week, we send out just one newsletter with our favorite story, and it's fun, it's funny, it's meant to just bring a little bit of delight into your Friday. Goes out to a few 100,000 people and has some of the highest open rates out there, we're happy to say. So you can do that at trendswithbenefits.com. If you have feedback on this podcast, you can reach out to us on Instagram at drinkmudwtr, or you can email us at podcast@mudwtr.com. That's also where you can send the voice memos. Just bust out your phone, don't overthink it, let us know who you are, how you like taking your mud water, and send that voice memo to podcast@mudwtr.com. And include your address, please. We need your address. And if we play the voice memo at the beginning of this podcast, we will send you a free mud water mug. So thanks to everyone who is sending those little voice memos in. We love getting them from you. All right, that's it. Get out in the world, have a beautiful day, and thank you for your time and attention. I do not take it for granted.